Your curves and stuff. Okay, we're all ready to go. Thank you very much. We'll now reconvene the open meeting. And the first conversation is going to be regarding 6.2 online compost facility project. And Kristen, you've provided your report to that regarding that project. Mm-hmm. I'll ask you to speak to it first, please.
Certainly. I provided this report to give you like an update on the latest developments in the on island composting project. It consists of the acquisition of a in-vessel hot rot vessel composting machine, and also includes the development of a building and some additional infrastructure down at the bird site. Initially, the total proposed project cost was just over $1.5 million, and BIM was really fortunate to receive a Clean BC Organics infrastructure grant for 2/3 of that amount, and that grant amount is just over $1 million. Additionally, I understand that the Knick-Knack Nook had made a commitment to Bowen Island Municipality for an additional $100,000 of funding to assist the municipality in coming up with their 1/3 contribution. So if you recall, last year during the financial planning process, council directed us to staff to defer the project start date, given that there were so many other capital projects on the go at that time. And as well, we don't actually have a funding source identified for the remainder of our 1/3 contribution. So we went back to the province and asked for permission to defer the project. They gave us a 6-month extension to initiate the project. In the ensuing months, we've done some further analysis on our organic waste volumes in the community that are picked up each year. And what we found is that we're actually picking up volumes of organic waste that hadn't been conceived to be picked up, or volumes of that much conceived until almost a decade from now. So we're way further ahead, and we're putting out and producing a volume of green waste that's much higher than the feasibility study had anticipated at this point in the project. So what that means then is the original plan to just acquire one of these machines, it's not feasible anymore. We'll actually require a second machine in order to process the volumes of organic waste that we have. So we had Carla, our Parks and Environment Coordinator. She has done a preliminary capital budget for the costs of acquiring a second machine. And in the report, her budget shows that that the capital budget now has jumped from 1.5 million to 2.4 million. And that would bring our required share to just over $1.2 million. So again, I can confirm that we do not have reserves to fund our contribution to the project. It's going to require additional borrowing. Given the current borrowing where we're at, we're about 38% of our borrowing limit right now. And this would add to that level of borrowing. It will require approval of the electors to do that. And we really do have many other considerations for additional borrowing at this time, especially with our water and utility systems. So council's going to have to consider the additional impact that this project is going to bring. And that's...
Okay. Thank you. Liam, I saw you have your hand up.
No, I was just waving goodbye to Kristine.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Okay, so I mean, it provides a fairly succinct report as it relates to the current status of that situation, and also raises points relative to the potential operating impact of a facility and the cost. So I will entertain any questions or comments. Joyce?
I just found it interesting that we had this report, and we also had the auditor's report in which the focus, or there's new focus on climate change and sustainability, etc. And I just find it interesting that we have this collision of ideals and expectations. not surprised that we're exceeding our projections. I always knew that we were going to before we even got it started. So I still believe it's a project that needs to go forward. We have to look at the cost, the climate change costs, or the climate costs of us shipping stuff off island and going further and further afield. We need to make sure that when we're doing the analysis, we're looking at those extra, whatever they're called, drop charges or whatever they're called.
Tipping fees.
Yeah. John, you have your hand up?
You, Fred. How much of the material that would go to the composting facility would be considered yard waste versus kitchen scraps?
I would have to speak with the contractor and get some additional information on that, or maybe Carla herself knows, but I can certainly talk to those two and see what their opinion, what their thoughts are on that.
Maybe I can just make one comment. The initial business case that was put forward identified basically that most or all of the material that was created under this facility would be basically wholesaled to a handful of local landscapers on island who would utilize that material. And I don't know if, in fact, doubling the output will provide a different type of operation than what was conceived in the original business plan. Something for consideration. Any other comments?
Get back to my yard waste comment. If a high percentage is yard waste, which I suspect it is, certainly in our discussions at the recent committee of the whole, council committee of the whole on water conservation, one of the comments made certainly by one of the councillors was he could see, gardening, no water being allowed for gardening. Well, this may quite dramatically change the amount of yard waste produced. And it's actually the reverse consequence of climate change. In other words, if you can't water your garden and you're not maintaining it as aggressively, the amount of yard waste may drop dramatically. It's something to think about. And I agree with Fred too. I mean, recently we tried to get some topsoil, and the local supply wasn't available. So, 2 came from off island, 1 came from on island. So it is hit and miss.
Okay, Allison.
Well, yeah, it's the timing thing. I'm totally with John. I think most of the yard waste, I don't know how they're going to tell how much is kitchen waste versus yard waste because it all goes in the same truck. And I have a bucket that I end up mixing yard waste with green waste, with kitchen waste, because it's, stuff I picked off the deck. So I don't know how they're going to, the other side of it is, I guess, are people going to start doing their own composting? Is that going to increase? Because if you've got a garden and you're growing things for vegetables, are you wanting your own composting? But, most of what I put out is sticks and twigs and branches, and that doesn't compost very quickly. But, yeah, so I don't know.
Any other comments? I'll just brace a couple of my thoughts. I think it's unfortunately the timing of the project is the issue. It's the right project at maybe the wrong time as it relates to the municipality. We've come back and talked about resources required to support a major capital project. We've spoken perhaps about the cost, and obviously tripling the borrowing or funding requirements will basically result in borrowing interest expenses rising 6 times over what was originally proposed in the budget. We have principal debt repayment. A larger scale operation has additional operating requirements and staffing requirements. I don't think there's any question about supply. I think the question is, what about demand and how that would be managed and handled from an operating perspective? I personally have, like as I said, in a perfect world, I put it off for another year and want to move forward with it. I just don't know that there will be a level of support, recognizing that I don't think this is going to be a cash flow benefit at this point. So I think my comment is, in a perfect world, we defer it. Obviously, funding is the source of issue with that. whether there'd be an opportunity to reapply. And I guess the question ultimately is the council can put it out to see if there's support or sufficient support on the island by way of a referendum or something to support it. And then that decision can be made by the population rather than trying to steer it through council at this point as a standalone. Just a comment. As I said, conceptually, yeah, I mean, where I lived previously up north, we had large scale composting operations that we took advantage of when we had a commercial greenhouse. And it's just all the resources are being really heavily drawn upon currently with the capital projects that are underway. So I guess that's my general comment. I don't know if there's any specific recommendation from this committee to council, but my comment would be I would have concerns, but I think if you really feel strongly about that, you should take it out to a point where the population has an opportunity to provide input. So we really know where people stand on this. Allison, your hand's up.
Well, I guess the other question is there's the current budget is based on making a bigger plan. The previous budget was just on the single system, and that's a lot less money. Was there a budget done, an updated budget for just doing the single system and not doing the expanded and just having the space for it? I mean, I know it's cheaper to do it as one overall, but you know, just to get it started.
But then what would we do with the excess green waste that the system can't handle?
Okay, so it would still have to be dealt with. So I guess I'm still looking for sort of more in the way of statistics, or you know, how much excess green waste is there if for the 1 versus 2?
Well, right now we already exceed the capacity of one.
Yeah, but by
machine.
how much? I mean, I don't have a.
So
I like
the
numbers, you know that. So I don't have.
It's in the report.
Is it all the comparison of how much we've tipped over the last 2 years per month or per week?
Oh, sorry. No, it's more of an annual data that identifies that the so the original where is it?
Well, I guess one of the questions is about seeing the numbers, because something else somebody said is because of COVID and everybody was at home and had nothing to do, they started to garden. So now that we're out of COVID, are the numbers dropping back down again? They certainly look like they are around here. You know, so I guess the numbers and how much are we going to save on the tipping fee, and how I don't think that
was part of the original business plan, I think, right?
Yeah, but we haven't got it updated for this one. And how much are we going to save on the contract for it being hauled off the island? Because
the entire tipping fee budget, that's for all of the waste, is about $100,000 a year out of a $1.4 million contract. That's the tipping fee piece.
the tip, okay, but then there's also the lesser trips to go into town. So presumably there'd be savings for that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I don't think we're asking for a decision though. We're just
No.
providing information,
So-
and
Yeah,
there is going to be a report that's going to council. So this is good feedback, because then we can add some additional things, or if you wanted to upfront, perhaps email us with some questions, we could do our best to address those in the report that eventually goes to council.
I thought some of those questions were raised at the council meeting.
Yeah.
I guess the other question is just the timing. If we've got to go for a sand and we have to show significant completion advancement by February, how are we going to do that? Just logistically.
I mean, we can like let a smaller scale, like planning contract or something that would identify that we've entered into even initiating an RFP would be satisfactory to the province to demonstrate that we've actually initiated the project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. With the timing,
We've
I mean,
initiated an RFP without knowing we've got the money to pay for it.
but we haven't sourced the funding, the capital funding from the municipality's point of view. And the final cost of that will be have to be determined. I think it's something that rather than a referendum, you probably have to do a poll in the community, a formal poll, if you want to do it in the time frame, because you can't do obviously a referendum isn't going to fly
Well,
in such a short period of time. I'm not sure how you would validate that from a community point of view.
If that's a.
Because February is pretty quick. So,
yeah, it is.
and there's a lot of things to develop in terms of the potential operating plan for that as well. John, you have your hand up still.
Yeah, quick. I don't know whether the operator has been selected or you're working with someone who actually runs these things, but it might be worth asking the question whether a hybrid startup might make sense where you go 2 or 3 years with one machine, and maybe there's certain times of the year where the pickup of waste is more works better for composting than other times of the year where you get a lot of like tree blowdown and wood may compost slower than other types of vegetation and maybe less productive. So you ask the operator whether there's a hybrid idea, but if you need to get on with it and it is a imperative, just get on with the one machine. Because clearly, as Fred said, you don't have time to borrow to go to 2 machines.
The challenge is that we're already at or exceeding capacity of the one machine, and you then have to continue to truck your other waste off island. So whether the truck is full or it's like 10% full, the cost is virtually the same.
Okay, I was just thinking some months you might truck and other months you wouldn't.
Well,
Sure.
I don't know how the machine works, but this is where the manager could help us.
as I recall from the original business plan too, there is only one other installation of this machine in Alberta, I think it was.
And we did meet with.
Yeah,
them.
it's not
They're in Alberta.
technology that or
Yeah.
a method that's being used widely. This
No, he's
like
outside of
one other operation example that exists. And so, I think you want to be pretty considerate about how you approach it in that type of situation. In particular,
other
it's not widely undertaken elsewhere. Allison?
Yeah, well, the other question is, depending on the stuff, I mean, you're going to get more yard waste and green waste in the summer and the spring and fall than you're going to get in the winter. And branches and twig and that kind of stuff can be stockpiled and used, later or saved. So I guess, to me, maybe it is okay to use the one machine, and it would be very busy in the summertime, but maybe not quite so busy in the winter. And what you stockpiled from the summer might be able to be used in the winter.
That's beyond the scope.
That's why I want to see tipping
just,
volumes and all that, but I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, I think that's the scope, beyond the scope of our committee. Our responsibility here is to look at the finance aspects of this, not the how do you move waste product. The financial information that's been provided is fairly clear, and as I said, it was a fairly succinct report of where we stand right now. The question is, based on that information, rather than other points, do we have a recommendation or a suggestion to council from a financial perspective as it relates to the project? I said I don't want to get hung up on the operation of it and where we're going to stockpile stuff and things like that. Really, kind of not really what. There's others that will have to address that, but we're looking at a timing issue as it relates to the commencement of the project. We're looking at the scale of the project. We're looking at the borrowing costs and financial implications for the project. And we're looking at staffing levels as it may impact the operation itself. And we're also looking at resources required to support the project itself. So, and the financial costs of that to the municipality. So I guess my question is, where do we stand, or do we have a stance for council for their consideration? So I think Joyce and then John.
As a member of Finance Advisory Committee, I would like us to say to council that there's need for public education about looming projects where debt would be included. This would be one of them. I think if we were to I love the idea of going and doing a poll to find out what kind of response there is, but making decisions without knowing what else is looming isn't good decision making financially. So it seems to me that maybe a recommendation from this committee could be that council consider what kind of communication with the public is needed to inform them about what's going forward and get response to many of those different projects / initiatives, challenges, whatever you want to call them. So I'll stop.
Thank you. John, your hand's up too.
Yes, thank you. Hearing that there's only been one other machine that we're aware of and are experienced with our water treatment plant, I'd say we should run for the hills. I'm prepared to recommend, given all the information we've received today, including that the whole business model of the original need for one machine and the funding model is no longer working, that and looking at the future debt service and the fact that Kristen has said we have to start including principal payments, I think it's a great idea, but I think maybe we have to forego the $1 million grant and try and focus on other financial imperatives and reconsider this in a couple of years. So I'm prepared to suggest that the Finance Committee recommend that council reconsider, given all the new information, moving forward with the with this initiative in the near future.
Can I ask one question as it relates to the grant? Is there any potential for it to be extended further for, say, 12 months or 18 months?
We can always ask.
I mean, if we were not to proceed, it's better to do it early than late into the process and retain the credibility for the municipality going forward. I'm just suggesting that perhaps an extension may be an option if it's at all possible. I mean, it's not like the environmental issues or benefits decrease over time here. And so the intent that was supported within the original grant request still exists. So I don't know if that means anything.
No,
in the real world.
It's a treasury board thing, like when they have to spend their money. And so we've already got one extension from them. It's possible. I mean, like Kristen said.
I have no idea, but it just seems to me that I really want to keep this thing alive, but I just don't know how it's going to be achieved in the time frame that we're dealing with. And I don't think we should say, well, 6 months out is good, because it's not going to be enough if we actually believe that we're at issue here. But we're going to need at least a year, I would think, before we'd even be in a position to consider it. This is my thought. That's just my thinking on it right now. Allison and Joyce, any further?
Well, I guess I'm just going back and reading. So the original one, because we were just going to buy one machine, was going to be financed as an equipment financing, which doesn't require elect or assent, 5-year equipment financing. So that's part, so that's adding, we can keep the grant, get one machine, and get started.
Yeah, but if we know where we are as it relates to the information that's provided, is that an appropriate action that may put us at financial risk later as we hit maximums and we do all sorts of things that way.
Yeah.
Can we go in knowing there's deficiencies in the business plan now? I would have real issues about the lack of transparency around that as it relates to for taxpayers.
I'm not saying don't give taxpayers all the information. All I'm saying is, financially, the people in, Cove Bay are paying extra debt, the Sun Cove sewer. We're getting, everybody's looking at paying extra things on their taxes. So I just don't know whether, financially it would fly if we had to go for a referendum. But if we could do the equipment financing and get it going and show that it can, and the other question is it going to pay for itself on an operating basis? So I can't find my file on.
Well, as I said, the original case was predicated on a handful of landscapers buying all the product, right? Because that would reduce staffing requirements at the facility and allow product to be distributed fairly expeditiously rather than trying to be open as a business enterprise. So we're losing people. We've lost 2 people, so we're going to hang tough for a minute.
We don't have quorum anymore.
Huh?
I'm not leaving. I'm just wandering around in my office looking for a phone.
No, it's okay. John's back now, and Joyce had to go. But conceivably, if we were to go complete this agenda, we'll be here till 4:30. Is everybody okay till 4:30?
Yeah.
I'd like to get through the entire agenda. Okay, so we're back to a point. John, your hand's still up, and Kristen, your hand is up as well. John,
I did have my hand up deliberately.
okay. Look, Kristen first, please.
I just wanted to say I echo what you said, Chair. These decisions, we can't just make them in isolation. We have to look at the whole picture. So again, it's fine to say, well, if we only did the short-term financing, well, even that there's $100,000 a year, but if that's $100,000 a year, and then we're looking at additional costs to operate our new community center, and we're looking at additional debt costs that we're already committed to, we got to consider the whole picture. So I don't think there's any point in trying to even move this in isolation without seeing the whole thing. So I really just want to reiterate that it's an information piece for the committee, and there will be a report going to council, and hopefully when that goes forward to council, we'll have some more fulsome information from the entire budget that is going to help inform their decision.
Okay. So are we okay with what we have done thus far in our discussion to assist you with that process?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
More
I wanted to
than.
make sure. It's from all different sides. There's different aspects to this, but I don't know, as I said, other than a specific recommendation, I don't know. I think we can highlight what we see as risk versus reward type positions as it applies. And I think we've kind of articulated that to some extent, hopefully. That'd be okay, everybody?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to 7.1 investment update. Kristen, I wasn't really going to suggest there's much to say here. It's just an ongoing update on the report.
Yeah.
Sorry, are you you're consciously skipping the capital projects?
Oh, did I? Well, I'm sorry.
Nice try, Liam.
Liam, we kind of got a bunch of what you, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Recognizing
My
the
apologies.
time. It's quite all right of recognizing the time. I don't have a whole lot to report on. And so if we want to, we could skip over.
Defer?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll come back appropriately to the agenda then. 7.1 business arising from the minutes, investment update. Anything in particular, Kristen, that you want to highlight as it relates to that report?
Just that I'm happy to report that November was actually a good month for us. We did manage to recoup a little bit on our short-term bond fund during the month of November, and I didn't have the statement by the time the agenda was produced, but I just got it yesterday, and it looks like we've recouped about 30,000 of our year-to-date unrealized losses on the bond fund. So yay, I hope to see that continued in that direction. Interest rates went up again yesterday, so
Yep.
Again, I think we're playing a little bit of catch up, but as they level off, and indeed start to come down a bit, then hopefully we'll be on the other side of this. We'll start making up those unrealized losses, and the plan still is to hold them and see this thing through, and then divest ourselves once we have recouped those unrealized losses on the investment fund. We are earning 4.8% as of tomorrow on our cash holdings, which is fabulous. So that's helping to offset some of that too. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was mentioned, I attended a Deloitte thing this morning. They're projecting 25 to 50 basis points as the top end of what they believe the current activity will be. And they're predicting a 3 out of 11 soft landing versus an 8 out of 11 hard landing. Good. That relates to the session for next year. So that's kind of what they're talking about. Just a heads up for what it's worth. Any additional questions for Kristen on that point? Seeing none. 7.2 operating expense update. That's been provided for in your package today. Any comments or questions? And Kristen, if you have anything you want to specifically address.
No, there's not a lot of movement from the report that I provided you with back in September. I think we projected a $38,000 surplus. This one's showing about 57,000. So, I mean, that's just a couple of big automobile repair bills away from breaking even, you know. So if we still have another month to go, but this one actually doesn't take into account the $30,000 gain on our losses there. So there's quite a bit of room for movement still, even at this late date in the year. But there's nothing in there that is surprising or that is unanticipated at this point. So so I'm hopeful that we will definitely end the year with a small surplus.
Thank you. Allison, your hand's up.
I just had one question on the grant revenue. We've
Yeah.
only got $1 million in, and you're saying we're going to get to 4. So is that coming in on the community center?
Yeah, I just actually put the grant claim in last week. I put in a claim for about $3.4 million. We have a report that we need to submit to the ministry in order for them to process that claim. And of course, it's a 7321 something. Part of it is our cost on that $3 million expenditure, but I do expect that we should receive about 2.4 million in grant revenue by the end of the year. That's claims up until September, because if you recall, the second grant application went in at the end of September. So nothing that we have expended all year up until September could be considered to be from either one of those grants. So it's quite easy reporting up until the end of September. After September 30th, we have to be very deliberate about which expenses we claim under which potential grant category.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. No other questions for that? Hopefully John's still there. The 8.1 new business policy work and timeline for completion. Kristen provided a copy of basically a worksheet for 2023.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty self-explanatory as it relates to what are effectively priorities overall for that. My only question on that going in is regards to DCCs and charges for that going forward. Is that something that would be included in that list, or is that something that would be held separate from that type of reporting?
It's something that is, it's certainly a multidisciplinary approach. It's something that requires a lot of input, both from the planning side, from the engineering side. So it's going to be very much a joint project. I know that Liam is really keen to get moving on that. So wherever we decide that that's going to fit in, we'll certainly move something and make that one a priority. Because
okay. As long as that list is still, that's still active, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I did. The point of this really was just to kind of make you aware of what is kind of in my immediate radar for what wants to get done. But anything that gets directly added to the list, then certainly we can shift things around, and certain things are going to be higher priority than others.
Thank you. Any questions for Kristen on that? Seeing none. 8.2 Financial Health Toolkit for Council. That's a tool that would be provided, I take it, to the new council overall. I thought that was really good. And I don't, is it an existing document or is that something that had just been created?
All Kristen.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, no, I thought it was really good. Very useful for somebody coming into that situation. Good stuff.
Yeah, we want to make sure that they're well equipped and feel comfortable with asking financial questions or ask questions about financial information. We actually had a booklet like this at a prior job for school trustees. So I kind of took that and then, you know, updated it to provide information that would be relevant in our own Bowen Island municipality context.
Mm-hmm.
I think people sometimes can be a little uncomfortable with asking questions about financial information if they're really not comfortable in that workspace. So I just wanted to give council some easy things that they could do to look at the financial statements and just become more familiar and more comfortable with them.
Good. No, I thought that was good. Excellent.
And I just want to share my appreciation. This was something that Kristen did on her own initiative. And I think it's excellent. And I really
Agreed.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Allison, your hands up?
Yeah, I had the first question that you asked is, well, where did this come from? So I'm assuming you're going to identify it as a municipal document and prepared by and dated it.
Yeah, that's what Joyce said I should do. So sure, I'll do that.
And then I guess my other question has to do with, you've got questions about financial information and questions to ask the auditor and things like that. Yet our terms of reference, you haven't made any reference in there to the financial advisory committee, finance advisory committee, because the auditor is responsible to council, but the way our terms of reference are set up, they're reporting to the audit committee. So if they want to have an audit committee meeting and ask the auditor all these questions, or, you know, just how is it going to work that they would
Yeah,
have?
because technically that's assigned to this group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I put it on this agenda too. If anybody feels like they would like to use it to ask the auditor some questions in part of those closed meetings, then you're empowered to do
But
so.
then the way you set this up, they're going to be expecting the auditor to come in person and answer those questions to them at council in May.
We can explain to them what the terms of reference of the committee
So
are.
I just thought maybe because you've got that, you should throw in a reference to the finance advisory committee and their terms of reference.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. We'll move on then. Information items. I don't think we have anything there for addition. Reference every time the plan. Our next meeting will be in late January, obviously with some new members of the committee at that time, I assume. Going forward, is there any other comments or questions or points that people would like to raise? I don't think we need any further items beyond that at this present time. Would anybody like to add anything at this time? No, everybody wants, yeah. Yeah, okay, I got it. Okay, so maybe we can move to adjournment here, please. I want to thank everybody for their effort. John, and the meeting is hereby adjourned. Joyce, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for their input and work today, and not too bad. Anyway.
And have a Merry
If I
Christmas,
don't talk to you
everybody.
beforehand,
If we
Yeah.
don't
good
see
holiday
you
season and Christmas.
beforehand.
Yeah, Merry
And
Christmas.
everybody take care.
Yeah,
That's it then. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks